Shabbat Shalom. I would like to talk today about Parshat Toldot and a few thoughts. I wouldn't call them insights, but some thoughts I had on Yitzchak, Isaac's prayer, which features at the very beginning of the Parsha. And my remarks will be based on the Pshat, which is a bit different from the full story that the Midrash likes to give us. There'll be three parts. First, I want to talk about the reason why, at least according to the Peshat, it's only Yitzchak who's praying. I mean, they're a childless couple, and we would expect that both parents would be equally concerned, and maybe even the mother more. But at least according to the Peshat, not according to the Midrash, but according to the Peshat, it's only Yitzchak. Vayetar Yitzchak. Yitzchak prayed. And one thought which I can offer in this direction, which is, I think, relevant, though again, not quite the midrashic interpretation that many of us are used to, has to do with the fact that in last week's parsha, at the end of the parsha, when Avram's servant successfully completes his mission and brings back Rivka as a wife for Yitzchak, she receives a blessing from her family in Haran, Betuel, Lavan, and the rest, who bless her with a multitude, a huge offspring. Achotenu at hayil alfei rivava. Our sister, you should have thousands and myriads. So it's quite possible that Rivka felt that there was no problem with her because she had received a blessing, and so maybe the problem was with Yitzchak. Now again, this is going against the grain of commonly accepted midrashic interpretation, which utterly villainizes Rivka's brother Lavan. And believe me, even according to the Peshat, he's not a very sympathetic person, but he's not necessarily quite the villain that the Midrash makes him out to be. And one proof comes from our parsha when Yaakov is fleeing for his life. Where does he go? Well, Rivka tells her, go to my brother Lavan. You'll be safe there. And not only that, but find yourself a bride from his daughters. So he can't be that bad. Now the Midrash noticed this blessing, and the Midrash says two different things. The Midrash doesn't have to be consistent. Midrash can take things in two different, even contradictory directions, and they're both valid. One is that blessings from the evil, wicked people are a curse. Her family doesn't say who, just says they blessed her, but presumably Lavan was there playing a major role. So they say that, Birkat V'She'im Kulala, getting a blessing from a wicked person is a curse. And that led to her being childless. But they also say that the blessing was carried out. Alfei Rivava, Alafim, the thousands, refers to the descendants of Esav, and Rivava refers to the myriads of descendants of Yaakov. So that's my first thought on the parsha. Now, my second thought has to do with a very unusual word that the Torah uses to describe both Yitzchak's prayer and God's response. It's from the root atar, ayin taf resh. When it says that Isaac prayed, Yitzchak prayed, it's vayetar Yitzchak. And when it says that God answered his prayer, vayeater lo Hashem. So it's both in an active voice and in a sort of passive voice. I don't know exactly how to describe the vayeater lo Hashem. What is this word here? Of course, Chazal when they say that there are, I think, 10 lashonot for tefillah, there are 10 verbs or expressions that the Tanakh uses for this practice of tefillah. And believe me, it's such a rich and varied practice that we need a lot of words to express it. It's a known fact to anthropologists that the more important a function is or an object is in the culture of a people, the more words they have to express for it. So, I mean, we may have one word for ice or for walrus, but the Eskimos have many. And we have many words for prayer because it's such an important feature of our religion and our heritage and our life. But what does this mean in its root meaning, vayetar? There are two suggestions. One, which to me, as a sort of amateur or semi-professional philologist, seems to make more sense, and that it comes from the Aramaic cognate, where the shin in Hebrew become like a tough in Aramaic, and it means osher meaning wealth or having much. So vayatar Yitzchak, he prayed much. He offered many prayers, and indeed, if we recall that he was married at the age of 40, and he had his twins when he was 60, so he had some 20 years to pray. That's, I think, a very cogent interpretation, but then it doesn't really, it's harder for me to understand the form used for the divine response, Vayater Hashem. So I'll just leave that as a tzarech iyun, as something that needs further investigation. The other explanation comes from the word atar, which apparently in some places takes on the meaning of a spade or a shovel, something you use to turn the earth over. And when it's before planting season, you go out and turn over the earth so that the earth that's been a few inches down gets aerated and so on. And so in this case, it means that the prayer's function or purpose was to turn the divine midah, the divine, I don't know what to call it, aspect or manifestation is probably better, from something that will be working against Yitzchak having children, Yitzchak and Rivka having children, to something that would be in favor of having children. And we would usually expect this to be to flip over from midat hadin to midat rachamim, as they're called in classic rabbinic theology. But here the Talmud doesn't say midat hadin, it says midat ragzanot, which is very interesting and unusual and noteworthy. So midat hadin does not mean anger. It just means the strict letter of the law, no leniency, no discounts. But it's not anger. On the other hand, midat ragzanut is anger. So I thought that was interesting. That's with this word which has made it into the vocabulary of prayer in rabbinic thinking. Now finally, what was Yitzchak's prayer? The Torah doesn't tell us what he said. And I don't find in any midrash suggestions as to what his prayer may have been. But if we look through in Tanakh, can we find any examples of prayer of a childless parent for children? Well, the most obvious place to look would be with Hannah, the mother of Shmuel. She was also childless, but more importantly, her prayer, Tfilat Hannah, is recorded in the Tanakh, and it is taken by Chazal to be the example par excellence, the paragon of prayer. The Gemara dissects her prayer in fine pieces and learns from it details concerning prayer, not just the language of prayer, but the bodily gestures and the attitude, mental and physical, that accompany true prayer. So shouldn't we find in Tfilat Chana a prayer that any mother or maybe father too, whose asking for a child can repeat. And we don't find it. If you go through all of the, if you ask Saint Google, who is the patron saint of all people who are looking for prayers and whatnot and charms, for, prayers for to help a childless couple, you won't find Tfilat Chana there. And there are good reasons for that. I'll tell you three. When Chana is, when Eli, the high priest Eli, sees her and mistakes her for a woman who's inebriated. Anyway, her initial request is not a prayer for a child, but it's a neder. She says, if I am given offspring, I will make him a Nazir. In other words, she's not asking for a child. She's saying, taking on a vow, if I get a child, I will make him a Nazir. He will never cut his hair. He will be the property, essentially, of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, and serve there all of his life, which is what eventually happened. So that's not something that would be, I think, appropriate for someone, in our own day to apply. Second, she got a blessing when she heard this, when she said this, from Eli Kohen. He prayed, Velokei Yisrael Yutein Shelatech. Very simple. We know that the Tanakh likes short, simple prayers that are to the point. And here it is in 4 words. May the God of Israel meet your request. And getting a blessing from someone of the rank of Eli Kohen is, again, not something that's that accessible, if at all, to anyone these days. And third, and I think the most striking, the most disturbing in a way to me, is that in Tfilat Chana, as I said, the paragon of prayer, that's the prayer that she offers after she's been given a child. She's no longer praying for her child. She's thanking God for having a child, but there's only one line in the entire prayer that refers to having children, and it's somewhat troublesome. She says, Akara Yalda Shiva V'Rabat Banim Umlala. The barren woman now is given birth to 7, and the woman who had many children is desolate. So she's not only thanking God for having many children, but cursing the woman who had children beforehand. That's not something that we would think, to be quite appropriate. So I think for all these reasons, Filat Chana, no matter how, and there's no taking away from its excellence and its beauty and its serving Chazal as the model for proper prayer, that there's nothing there that's quite useful to someone who's looking for a prayer for children. Now, if you go again, as I said, to St. Google, you'll find all sorts of things. You'll find some long prayer that's ascribed to the Ramban, Nachmanides, but I see no reason to accept it as authentic, and all sorts of other things that belong to certain directions of religious life that I don't identify with. Well, all I can say is this, is that, at least again, in my very humble, and believe me, it's humble, the older I get, the more you realize how much you have to learn, is that it can be summed up in the phrase, Rachmana liba bai. God, searches, knows our heart. Whereas prayer is not coming to God with a shopping list. I need this, that, and the other thing. Oh, yes, and I forgot I could also do a little more of that, a little more of this. And if it's not too late, if you haven't, rung up the cash register yet, then I like this and that. And if my zichuyot, if I haven't done enough meritorious deeds to balance off my request, well, put it on my account, and I'll try and kiss the mezuzah a few more times today, and put a few coins in the charity box in the pushka. That's not what prayer is. Prayer is simply standing humbly, sitting, bowing, but mainly having attitude of humility before the unfathomable greatness and majesty of God, and humbly submitting to his mastership, to his ownership of the world and everything. You don't have to come with a shopping list. If you really do believe that God knows your thoughts and knows your situation, then you don't have to verbalize these particular requests. It's the essence is humility and submission. Yimale Hashem Eshalot Yibchem Latova. Amen Selah, and we should have a Gula Shlema and a complete, utter, resounding victory over the evil forces which our brave soldiers are confronting right now. Thank you and Shabbat Shalom.